Dr. Corey. We are talking about self-talk today, right? And we're getting into whether the approach that we take when we talk to ourselves is conditioning our minds towards misery or towards mastery. This is a really fun topic, I think. It is for me anyways. I hope that it is for you too. And to me, self-mastery or mastery of self-talk, okay, is just one component, one piece of what mental mastery is all about, and mastering our mindsets, okay? It's just one piece of what high performers do, one piece of what high performers pay attention to as they practice their mindset training, all right? So we're going to talk about what most people do, and we're going to talk about what not to do, and we're going to talk about what you guys can implement immediately to condition your minds most effectively, all right? And I'm going to be giving you guys some personal examples. I'm going to be giving you guys some client examples as well, and I'm going to show you, I'm going to talk to you about what the research really says. Here's the first thing I want to say about this. Most of you who are watching, train your bodies most days of the week, right? You go into the gym and you are conditioning them for something, whether it's strength, whether it's agility, whether it's endurance, whether it's flexibility. You are conditioning them very deliberately. Most of you who are watching too also do some sort of work. You have a craft, right? And you train for your craft. You condition for your craft. You learn new things, right? Notification. So on a daily basis, we are conditioning ourselves in different ways. But how many of us actually take into consideration how we are conditioning our minds? You know, clearly it's my aim and what I get very, very excited about to help each of you learn how to do exactly that and how to understand how vitally important it is for living our lives as successfully and effectively and happily and in a fulfilled way as possible, okay? But the conditioning of our minds, the training of our mindsets is often like the very last piece that we consider. And I don't think that we can look at it like that. We can't look at our thoughts as an afterthought, all right? So here's this. Most of us can relate to beating ourselves up. Give me a high five. Give me a thumbs up. Don't give me a heart. Give me a thumbs up if you agree that you've beat yourself up in the past, in your heads, okay? Most of you can relate to that. We go through an unfortunate, a difficult circumstance or experience, and that's often where our minds go, okay? A client that I spoke with yesterday, in fact, she said that her most prominent self-talk of late was something like this. What is wrong with me? Can we relate? We relate to that thought? Have you ever said to yourself something like that? She continued with some other thoughts like, I can't do this. And, you know, no one would really understand. And then one that really struck me, because it indicates to me this belief that's like operating in the background all the time, was I don't trust people. And as we're talking on the phone, you know, I do my mental edge sessions on the phone, Skype sometimes. I said, so you don't trust me? And if you don't, like, that's fine. Like, tell me the truth. I need to hear that because we've only been working together for like a year. If you don't trust me, there's a big issue here. And she stopped and she was like, well, no, I do. I trust you completely. And I said, okay. So the thought, the self-talk of I don't trust people is not 100% true 100% of the time. We've just found evidence against that. And we'll get into how you guys can use that as you become more aware of what the self-talk is. But with things like that, with like beliefs like that operating in the background all the time, we will, find ways that they become more real. So if that's operating in the background for her and she's engaged in conversations on a daily basis with people, what's going to happen is she's going to act like she doesn't trust people, and then the people are going to respond to her in a way that says, well, we don't trust you, and they're going to leave. And then her belief gets justified, even though it's not true at all. Make sense? It's a big deal what we say to ourselves, okay? That self-talk is really important. So, guys, when you think about the thoughts that I've just outlined for you that my client has, I mean, what feelings do those statements prompt? They're not comfortable statements. They often lead to, a sense of discouragement or a sense of fear, right? They don't move us into this, feeling of spaciousness and openness and curiosity. So what we're getting into here, guys, is that what she's doing is she is literally conditioning her mind to see the negative, in everything, and to fault herself, and to see that the responsibility is elsewhere. It's outside of herself. It's with other people. It's with other things, and to believe that she is incapable. All right? She's certainly not focusing on what her strengths are with any of those thoughts and that self-talk. What she's doing through that self-talk is that she's also, and this is super important, guys, she is literally changing the architecture of her brain. That substance up here, that's the hardware of our minds. Our minds are the software that literally change the hardware based on the manner in which we think. So she's changing her brain, and not in a good way, by having that level and that type of self-talk. Now, here's the deal. Studies actually show that people who respond to themselves with, here's the big soft word, guys, compassion, people who respond to themselves with compassion, and I'm going to talk to you about exactly what that means, when they have or experience a mistake, or they notice a weakness or a flaw within themselves, or they experience a setback, rather than blasting and blaming and shaming themselves, they actually experience enhanced motivation, enhanced mental health, enhanced physical health. Our bodies are intimately and directly connected with our minds. They experience greater resilience, fortitude, the ability to bounce back quickly from stress and from challenges in their lives. Not because they talk to themselves in a reprimanding way, in a put-down way, in a critical way, but because they're kind and they're compassionate, just like you would want a coach to be with you. All right, I don't know how many people respond to yelling from their coach and directives and demands. All right, I certainly don't. That would not feel good to me. So let me go through the 3 things that are involved in self-compassion. Okay, this is what the research has shown it's all about. Number 1 is that self-compassion is what it does is it gives us a sense of common humanity. A sense of common humanity is that we are reminded that we're connected to everyone and everything, to the larger whole that is this world community, okay? Because we're all in this human experience together. God, just saying that feels good, okay? I am not alone. Now, I am literally alone, like in my dining room right now. There's no one else around. Well, there's my cat. But there are all these other houses out there with people in them, with lives, who experience mistakes all day long. I'm not the only one who's fallible. You guys aren't the only ones who are fallible. Everyone else is too. So that human experience is awesome sometimes. It's a lot of the times very mundane, and some of the times, guys, it's pretty darn sucky, right? Okay. Self-compassion isn't ignoring the sucky, and I'll get into that. But that's the human experience. So we're reminded that we are a lot more similar to people than we are different. Okay, so number 1 is a sense of common humanity. Number 2 is understanding. All right, so we're really, really good at being understanding with friends, right? They go through a difficult time, and we genuinely want to help them out, right? We don't want to tell them how stupid they are and how unworthy they are, and that, you know, they're not enough and that they're not trying hard enough. Well, maybe some of you have said that to friends, but I don't know if I'd call you a friend. But here's the deal. The strategy that we use in helping other people out, okay, is really, really beneficial and easy for us because we're distanced from the emotion and the intensity of the experience, all right? That's an important piece. So because we have this, we're pretty well practiced at helping other people, we literally can just turn it around on ourselves and do it the same way, all right? So the first piece of self-compassion is common humanity. The second piece of self-compassion is understanding. And the third piece of self-compassion is that, like I said earlier, we are not disqualifying that something didn't go well, didn't go our way, isn't ideal, and isn't sucky. We're not ignoring that, and we're not avoiding it at all. We're actually, what self-compassion does is we acknowledge it. We acknowledge it, but what we're not doing is catastrophizing and blowing the whole thing out of proportion, all right? So I need you guys to know that self-compassion, self-talk, is not an ignorant way of responding to ourselves, right? We're not ignoring that something is sucky or less than ideal, and we're not ignoring that something is painful or uncomfortable. In fact, what we're doing is exactly the opposite, and that is, we do that first when we offer ourselves self-compassion, okay, and talk to ourselves in a kind way, like we would a compassionate friend or advocate, right? We say this sucks. I don't like this. If I could choose, I wouldn't be in this situation at all. I'd like to get out of it immediately and as fast as I freaking can. But I can do this. I can do this with some effort and some deliberateness. So I'm not ignoring it, but I'm also moving myself forward in a positive direction, okay? And positivity is a big piece of this. Yes, a positive direction. Not ignoring, not burying my head in the sand, acknowledging, but then understanding that I'm conditioning myself to either move forward or step backwards, okay? So one of the common misunderstandings, by now you guys understand, with compassionate self-talk is that it's soft and it's airy-fairy, and it's not. clearly, as I've demonstrated. It demands acknowledgement, okay? And that piece can be soft, but it's more direct than anything. It's straightforward. And it's also an invitation to take some level of responsibility for what's occurring. And when we do that, what we're met with are choices, okay? When we blast ourselves, when we shame ourselves, when we blame ourselves and we say, no, whatever, like, can't do it. There's something wrong with me that this can't happen. That feels threatening. And the response of the body and the nervous system in a case where we feel threatened is to shut down. So now we can understand why this compassionate advocate self-talk and sort of a stance is so important. It moves us out of threat, okay, and into capacity and strength. So here's the big piece of this that I think we really need to address. There is research that shows that one of the most effective ways of talking to ourselves is in the third person. This comes back to why, how we talk to ourselves like we would a friend in the third person. So we're much better at it. It's well practiced because we do it all the time with the people that we care about. And because we're more accustomed to it, it's easier. So let's turn it around for ourselves. So saying to myself something like, okay, Corey, you're going to power through this. I literally said that to myself when I'm 17 minutes late for my Facebook Live, and I'm thinking all of these people, hopefully a lot of people, but at the same time, it's a lot of people. They're waiting for me. I got to figure this out. I can figure this out. Corey, you got this. See how I'm talking to myself? I didn't say I got this. I said, Corey, you got this. Okay? It's like we're coaching someone outside of ourselves, getting a little bit of distance and space between that nervous energy or that anxious energy emotion that has the potential, okay, or the tendency in many cases to move us into like, the brakes come on, we get super rigid, we collapse, and then we give up. Can't do it. Okay? Here's why it's also important. Third person. When you speak from the third person perspective, okay, you feel like you're not married to the emotion. Like, it's not me, but there's an experience of it. And this really relates to what I call the this is versus the I am perspective. So think about the times when you've experienced some sort of emotion that's uncomfortable for you. Let's just take anxiety. When you say, I'm so anxious, that's way different than this is an experience of anxiety, right? So whatever emotion it is, practice that, guys. This is versus I am. Because when you get into the I am, it's like every single cell of your body is that emotion. But when you can say, this is an experience of, it's like it's outside of you a little bit. And maybe a part of you is experiencing some level of anxiety, but there are other parts that aren't. Another part may be experiencing happiness or awe or joy or enthusiasm, okay, or determination. So we're not all of something, and that's what this is an experience of gets us to. So here's something else that's important, guys. On a chronic level, like we've been talking about acute instances of an emotion that's prompted by the thought that we have and the self-talk that we're engaged in. Remember, it goes thought, feeling, behavior. So we want to learn how to reverse engineer it. And when we notice that we're having an experience of some sort of an emotion, if we reverse engineer it a little bit and ask, well, what thoughts was I having? What self-talk was I engaging in that created that for me? Now we're in this space where we can create a greater level of awareness for ourselves, all right? And it all starts with awareness. But on a more chronic level, if we're constantly engaged in negative self-talk and putting ourselves down and blaming ourselves, what happens is our confidence goes down the tubes, okay? What we tell ourselves significantly influences our level of confidence or lack thereof, right? If we're willing to practice conditioning our minds toward being more sensitive to adapting to our circumstances in a positive way, okay? And more sensitive to the tone of voice we use with ourselves and the wording that we use with ourselves and images that pop up here. Those are thoughts too. Self-talk comes in images also. What happens is we become more fluid, all right? And we can more easily make course corrections so that we can behave in ways that more align with our values and our principles and our philosophies, all right? So this is the value of taking stock of self-talk so that we can be more deliberate and conscious and attentive to how we're conditioning our minds. I said earlier that the brain is the hardware and the mind is the software, okay? Talking to ourselves negatively, blasting ourselves with like accusations and tearing ourselves down. What that is, that's falling prey to just the brain's biology, all right? There's nothing inherently wrong with our brains, okay? They evolved to be, really sensitive to threat and things that could potentially go wrong in our environments to harm us. But the mind, when we condition it, okay, what we're doing is we're training it. We're training it to override those messages of threat from the hardware so that we can move more adaptively and jive and jab, and that's adaptivity. That's agility, just like we train our bodies for, right? That's what we also need to train our minds with, okay? And I call that emotional agility. Emotions created from our thoughts, they happen up here in our minds or wherever it is. Our minds are kind of all over the place because they are, boy, I could go in a million different directions with that. They are influenced by our relationships and everything that's going on in the environment, clearly. But let me give you another example. So I was working with a client yesterday, and we were discussing how we can look at this from the physical training perspective, right? Training the mind, like training the body, in that it needs to be stressed, okay? In order to get stronger, to grow, all right? It's got to, we need some sort of load, right? Give me a thumbs up. You guys who go to the gym every day understand like progressive overload. So here's what you wouldn't do. I wouldn't go to the gym and say my max squat at this point is, say it's 175. Let's move that down. Say it's 150. Okay. Say it's 150. I'm not going to go to the gym and, even if I've decided, okay, I am going to work my way up, the ultimate outcome for my squat is 225, okay? I'm not going to walk into the gym. I can do 150. I can do that well. I'm not going to walk into the gym and load 225 pounds onto the bar and try to squat that, okay? I would probably freaking be crushed, right? Physically, for sure. all right? Completely defeated. It's progressive overload, guys, that we're looking for. We load the bar to slightly above what we know we are currently capable of so that we can test what we've been training. Training of the mind, conditioning of the mind works the same exact way, okay? We start slowly. But guys, where does it start? It starts with awareness, like I mentioned before. So when my clients ask me, how do I stop beating myself up? It doesn't start there, okay? We don't just stop. What we have to do first is we have to get some level of clarity around how the thoughts happen. We've got to get some clarity around the patterns and the ways in which we think, all right? So we start with just noticing. We start with observing, okay? When it happens, where it happens, and how it happens. And we're receiving input and feedback from essentially two places, internally and externally within the environment. And that's really valuable to know, okay? We can ask ourselves, in what situations do I tend to have thoughts that produce negative outcomes for me, all right? Negative emotions like fear, like anxiety, like discouragement. Are there certain people when I'm around them that prompt negative self-talk? It doesn't mean that we shouldn't be around that person. What it is it's an opportunity in that moment, if negative thinking or self-talk come up, is to get in touch with that and just be aware of it, okay? No judgment. You guys have heard of mindfulness. This is what I'm alluding to. Mindfulness is a non-judgmental awareness of what's going on up here. What's happening in the mind? Non-judgmentally. It's not in that moment with that person when that thought comes up that that person is bad. That's judging. And it's not that the thought is bad. That's judging. First step is just noticing, just observing. Okay, you can go back to some of my other videos to find out how to do that, how to practice that mindfulness and awareness, okay? But when we become aware of the nuances of those thoughts, because you might find that some of them come in really fast and hard, and some of them come in like whispers, and some of them have colors to them. Some of them scream at you, and some of them, they drift in really slow and they go out really slow, and some of them like are really incessant. Those are the patterns I'm talking about. But what are the words? What are the images? All that stuff. Here's my point. Awareness first, guys. Self-talk, getting in touch with that, is all about just observing and noticing, number one. And we learn to notice and observe what's going on up there. That's the practice. That's the conditioning itself. Like we condition our bodies, we condition ourselves to just be more aware and to notice and observe. Okay, then the next step is to learn how to adjust and adapt and course correct when we notice what isn't in our service going on in that self-talk, okay? Now, I want to talk a little bit about what those course corrections can look like. When we do course correct, guys, it can be done in a number of ways. I want you to imagine that, okay, you're getting on stage. You're getting on stage to speak to a group of people, or you're going to go Facebook Live, okay? You're not super accustomed to Facebook Live. And you notice self-talk like, I wish I had practiced this more, or something like, I'm sweating. This cannot be a good sign. Now, I'm laughing. If you're laughing, that's a good thing, okay? Laughing can kind of disarm you in that situation. But so you hear those thoughts, and you're aware that this type of talk it's maladaptive, right? And you know that it's probably not going to help you perform your very best. So you course correct. You notice it, You observe it. Oh, it's there. Okay. Now you can offer yourself, I'm going to give you 4 types of course corrections for positive self-talk, right? Okay. Number 1, instructional self-talk. I'll give you some examples. Number 2, inspirational self-talk. Okay. Number 3, inquisitive self-talk. And number 4 is imagery. You got your 4 I's for self-talk. Positive self-talk, conditioning level self-talk, mastery self-talk, okay? Every one of you is going to find that one of those works better for you at any one time, okay? This is where we get into the uniqueness of what goes on in our minds and how we can best condition ourselves. In training, same way, right? You know, no people are necessarily going to have the same program and get the same results. Same thing in like nutrition and diet, all right? Well, why is the flexible dieting movement so popular? Because we understand that all of us are so different, okay? So what you do is going to be tailored specifically to what resonates most with you in particular. But what we're doing here is that we're moving from internal to external, all right? Those of you who are athletes out there or performers of some kind, okay? In performance situations, what don't you want? You don't want to be in your head. You don't want to be thinking, oh gosh, did I say the, like if you're speaking, did I say the right words? Did I say that in the right way, in the right combination? Like, am I standing in the right way? If you're on the court, for example, the basketball court, you don't want to be thinking about, should I move my left foot or my right foot, right? If you're in the gym, yes, initially when you're learning to squat, you're thinking about that form. But when you have 300 pounds on your back, you don't want to be thinking about every single little piece of that form breaking down. We've got to be dialed in, okay? So we're not internally asking ourselves those questions that get us further into our heads. So, you know, this kind of leads to another discussion about what is flow, because when we're in flow, there's no I. There's no I whatsoever. Okay, we are not in the center of our worlds anymore when flow is present, but that's another discussion. So what we need to do in this instance is we find a voice that's warm and kind and uplifting and motivational, inspirational, okay? But here is an example of instructional self-talk, all right? Instructional self-talk in a situation like this would be, walk tall, sister, speak from your heart, this is me, going Facebook Live for the first time or getting on stage. And I'll tell you, every time I get on stage, guys, to speak to an audience, there's some adrenaline, all right? I'm sweating, but here's what I say. Oh, baby, this is excitement right here. Yep, But instructional would be walk tall. Go out there, speak from your heart, Corey, and have a conversation with the audience. That's instructional, okay? It's kind of a step-by-step. Now, inspirational self-talk might sound like this. Oh, you got this. Bring it on. Yeah, you are walking into an opportunity right now, okay? That's inspirational, right? It's uplifting, galvanizes you. Inquisitive self-talk might be like this. You ready to rock this? Yeah? You ready to show them how to achieve their best? Okay. That's inquisitive self-talk. It's questions, but what it really is it's a directive statement posed as a question. It's like open-ended, and it draws your energy forward, right? Did you guys feel that? Okay. So then there's imagery, right? And imagery, self-talk, that's really personal, okay? So you might, in the moment, in this example, you might walk out on stage and imagine like all of the energy from every body in that audience and your body like converging in one big explosion. That could be what you're seeing in your head. So to review, let's remember that everything we say, everything we do, everything we think, everything we feel, okay, it all has the potential to become a habit, positive or negative. It all has the potential to become a pattern of behavior, right? It can be one that's either aligned with our personal philosophies and principles and values and how we want to show up in the world. Or it can be a pattern that moves us further from all those things, all right? And so my question to you is how? How are you conditioning your mind for positive self-talk, to move in the direction of your goals, to move in the direction of your dreams, in a way that brings you closer to your true identity and character, all right? Ultimately, practice it. Practice doing it for yourselves. Don't make your thinking an afterthought, okay? Put that down as a discipline, just like you do conditioning your bodies. Let's condition our minds too, because ultimately they're probably going to be around longer than the capacities our bodies do, if we're honest with ourselves. Okay, so questions, comments, please post them. Let's keep the conversation going. All right, thanks guys. Take care. Have an awesome weekend.